300 brave men may not have won a victory, but this is the story of an honorable defeat that will go down in history. Exactly 2,500 years ago, the Persians united under the Achaemenid Empire and conquered the Lydian Empire in Anatolia, the Babylonian Empire and Egypt, and challenged the whole world with their huge state. The new target of the Achaemenid Empire was the Greek lands. On the Persian throne was Xerxes I, who had the title of King of Kings. Xerxes' father had previously tried to conquer Greece, but was crushed by the Athenians in the Battle of Marathon. Now it was his son, Xerxes I's turn. The Persian army began to gather in Anatolia with soldiers from all over the world. Meanwhile, ambassadors were sent to the scattered Greek cities, and they were asked to submit to Xerxes, King of Kings. Most of the Greek kings were afraid of facing the Persians, but the two kingdoms that ignited the war were Athens and Sparta. Persian ambassadors to Athens and Sparta were executed by the Greeks. After this incident, other Greek kings were encouraged and formed an alliance, and they began to wait for the day when the Persians would come. There was the Sea of Marmara between the Greeks and Persians, and the Persians had to march their army overland via the western Black Sea route, so some Greek philosophers thought it would take years for the Persians to arrive. However, the Greeks experienced their first shock here. The Persian king took his army to Sanakkale, where they tied the ships side by side and created a floating bridge used for the first time in history. Thus, the Persian army stepped into European territory in a very short time. In the Greek alliance, every voice was heard, and unity could not be achieved. The Athenians would wage the war by sea, and the Spartans would wage the war by land. King Leonidas thought that the most suitable place for this was to hold the Thermopylae pass. The numerical advantage of the Persian soldiers did not matter in this small and narrow passage passing through the mountains. The Spartans set out with 300 elite soldiers. Volunteer troops joined them on the way, and their number reached 7,000. Spartan forces began to hold the Thermopylae pass. The Persian king Xerxes gathered such a large army that the Greek historian Herodot gives the number of the Persian army as more than 2 million soldiers. But today's historians find this number to be an exaggeration. They say that the Persian army consisted of 300,000 people, but even this number represents a huge army that has never been seen before. When the Persians arrived at the Thermopylae pass, they saw the shields of 300 Spartan soldiers lined up like a wall in front of them and the volunteer soldiers were waiting behind so as not to disrupt the Spartan line. When the Persians arrived at the Thermopylae pass, they saw the shields of 300 Spartan soldiers lined up like a wall in front of them and the volunteer soldiers were waiting behind so as not to disrupt the Spartan line. However, according to Spartan law, the Spartans were not to submit to anyone or retreat, so there was no agreement. Thus, the Battle of Thermopylae began in 480 BC. The Persians, who attacked in groups of 10,000, were falling to the ground in the face of the strong defense of the Spartans. In the narrow pass, numbers really did not matter. Leonidas was right. Spartan warriors were killing by doing what they knew best. As the Persians in the front row fell, it was the turn of those in the back. As the Spartan soldiers in the front got tired, they changed places with the soldiers in the back. King Xerxes withdrew his army when he realized that he could not break through the Spartans' defenses like this. While Persian losses were expressed in thousands, only a few Spartans lost their lives. King Xerxes realized that he could not defeat the Spartans with ordinary soldiers. He activated a special military unit, the Immortals. This unit consisted of Iranian soldiers trained since childhood. These two military units of the ancient world faced each other, and 10,000 people of Immortals attacked the Spartan line on the second day of the war. In the middle of the war, the Spartan wall could not stand any longer and began to collapse. The Immortals who broke the line fought with the volunteer forces in the rear. The battle order on both sides was completely disrupted, and fierce battles took place. At the end of the day, although the Spartans lost a lot of soldiers, King Xerxes withdrew his army because he did not want to lose his most elite military unit completely, so the Immortals failed to live up to their name. The development that would change the fate of the war took place on the evening of the second day. A young man from the region named Ephialtes showed the Persians a secret path through which they could go behind the Spartans in exchange for gold. The Persian troops, who came behind the Spartans using this road, would surround the Spartans from both sides. Some Greeks who received this news left the battlefield and fled. However, King Leonidas and the remnants of 300 Spartans and 1,600 volunteer troops continued to hold the passage. On the last day of the war, the Persians attacked from both sides around noon. The Spartans tried to fight back with spears, and then with their swords until their spears broke, and one of the first to fall was King Leonidas, fled. Leonidas died after being speared in the chest. The next war continued between the Persians, who wanted to possess the king's body, and the Spartans, who tried to protect him. As the sun set, there was no breathing Greek left in the Thermopylae pass. Xerxes took out his anger on the lifeless body of King Leonidas. Leonidas's head was cut off and impaled, and his body was crucified. The Persians advanced and set fire to many Greek cities up to Athens. But when they were defeated by the Athenians at sea, they could not pass to the Peloponnese Peninsula. They withdrew from Greek territory a year later due to the supply shortage in the army and epidemic diseases.